Hi everyone. A lot many times people come and ask me this question that Raghav, I'm taking a lot of interviews, but I'm not able to crack any of them. And where the same people know someone who's so good at interviewing that they take interviews and they almost crack all of them. So what is the difference between the two? Today we are going to talk about these things. So what are the difference between successful interviewing and not successful interviewing? Maybe you are missing out some kind of basic conventions of interviewing, or you are making some deadly mistakes. So what are these deadly mistakes? Let's talk about these deadly mistakes today. So before I go further, I would like to just introduce myself. My name is Raghav, and in my personal capacity, I work as a career coach in careerireland.com, which is one of the top career mentoring company based in Ireland, with having more than 1,000 customers in the last 3 years. So let's continue with where we are. So, what are the most important and deadly mistakes that people do in the interviewing? The number one thing is not realizing that results are rewarded, efforts are not. When you are taking any of the interviews, be it a role of a business analyst or digital marketing, automation, or program manager, project management, whatever it is, employers usually try to focus on what are the results that you are generating. But most of the time, interviewers are very much focused about driving the efforts, that what they have done, what was their roles and responsibilities, what kind of key things that they have completed in the projects. And in terms of these operational part, they don't try to focus on the results that they have generated. This is the most important part that people should be focusing on, and people mistake it by not mentioning it that too much. For example, if you're a business analyst, you're talking about you have done a lot of customer interactions, customer negotiations, you have handled customer escalations and all. And if you're not talking about results generated, that some of the results like that you have had a net promoter score of 9.5 or 8.5 out of 10, or if you are going to talk about that you have handled a successful negotiation of maybe 50,000 euros or something in terms of the change request or something, then it is going to be some kind of results. So I would suggest that understand always that whatever actions you are doing, what are the results of it, and focus on the results more rather than actions. People would like to see your results rather than actions. Again, look into this, that the results are rewarded, efforts are not. That's one of the big mistake that people do. The second mistake that we are going to talk about is that most of the time people fail to tell the impact of their result. For example, the result was big, it was medium, it was small. They are unable to mention about the results, the impact of the results. Most important part of result is showing the results or maybe the impact of the result through some metrics, numbers, or KPIs. For example, let's talk about if you are a QA, if you are a person of QA automation, then what was your code coverage area? Okay, what was the automation coverage area? Or if you're talking about if you are a programmer, then talk about that what kind of quality programming you have done, what kind of minimum defects out of every 100 line of code, what kind of defects level you had. Or maybe talk about this, that if you are a QA automation, or maybe if you are talking about if you're an HR recruiter, you can talk about that what was your time to fill, and if it is, and show the metrics around these. So if you show the metrics, it will show that in terms of the impact of the results that you are creating. Showing the impact in the terms of your numbers, metrics, or maybe in terms of KPIs is going to help you out. If you're not showing the impact of the work by some metrics, then you are doing another deadly mistake. Okay. Next, we are going to talk about what is the third mistake people usually do is they fail to differentiate between a push start versus a kick start, or maybe self start. So what is the difference between a push start and a self start? Push start is a kind of a person in which, and I would say that most of the employers pay a special focus on whether the candidate they are interviewing, they are a push start candidate or a self start candidate. So push start candidates are something in which managers, team leaders, or maybe other stakeholders are coming to them and telling them what what they need to do. For example, if you are talking about any role, be it role like a scrum master, and then people are telling about what are the impediments in the work that team is facing, or maybe why the burn down rate is going down. So any kind of problem when it comes, and somebody comes back and gives you a solution and asks you to do the job, then it is a push start work. Whereas if you are focusing on solutions rather than a problem and giving a solution to people, then it is a self-start thing. You need to come back to people and tell about that what could be the solution of this. If you're a scrum master, as I told in the last example, if you're a scrum master and you are talking about the problems that team is facing, impediment, there is distractions, the sprints are not going on time, or maybe customer is not happy, in all those things, you need to come back with the solutions to your managers, to stakeholders, to customer, or to anybody, that what could be done over here. If the sprints are not getting if the things are not getting done in time, what you can do here. You need to come back with solutions like, we have 7 processes. Instead of 7 processes, we can cut down 3 of these, compact it to 4. It is going to increase the turnaround time, it is going to reduce the overall efforts in that, and we would be able to deliver the things on time. Or if you can come up with a solution that we can do some innovation in the coding or programming or maybe any other things, or maybe we can put up some automation that would save some labor's time in this, or maybe reduce the manual efforts. In this case, you will be able to do the things quickly. That is kind of a solution mindset. So if you showcase to people in the form of a different examples that you have put forward these things, people will understand that you are a self-start rather than a push start. And most of the companies, they would prefer people who have the self-start attitude. The way the interviews are conducted in UK and Ireland is like that. People ask a lot of questions in terms of examples. What was your biggest achievement? What is your roles and responsibilities? What was the time when you made a customer happy? What was the time when you pushed your boundaries? Tell me about something when you failed and you learned some lesson about it. So whenever you are having all these kind of things, it is most important that you showcase your self-start creativity and your work that you have been doing it. The next mistake people do is considering the job description as full. A job description most of the time is not a complete job description. There are many other elements to a job description that many times it is considered as assumed but never told. For example, if you're going for a digital marketing role and it is mentioned about social media marketing, budgeting, Google AdWords or pay-per-click advertising or many other, or email marketing and everything, but it is not mentioned about SEO, on page, off page, or Google Analytics, or maybe working on some advanced tools, digital marketing tools like HubSpot or something. It may be possible that they might have assumed that, or maybe Google Analytics or data analysis of some of the data. So it may be assumed that many times employer will consider that, okay, the digital marketer will have this kind of knowledge, or maybe it is not mentioned in the job description, but people are preferring that, okay, if you have this kind of experience, it would be more preferred. So if you do not have this understanding, you'll never be able to give the right examples that would matter the employer the most. So how are you going to deal with that? So the best thing is that you have a before having the interview, you have a chat or a discussion with the HR about, apart from the job description, is there any underlying assumptions that the hiring manager could have? Or if possible, whenever you are taking the interview with the hiring manager, at the time of your ice-breaking phase of the interview in the first 2-3 minutes, you can have a chat about, informal chat about this, that I've gone through the job description and I know that this 1 2 3 4 5 things are there in the job description, but would you mind telling me that in this digital marketing role, are you also looking for someone who's well versed with Google Analytics or maybe data analysis or maybe XYZ things that you think of? Get this thing clarified, because what's going to happen, either he's going to say yes or no, but he's going to clarify his points more, that what exactly he's looking in the candidate, and you can tailor make your examples according to those requirements that the interviewer is having. Most of the time interviewer asks this question, that do you have any questions for me, at the end of the interview, and there's no point for it, because if you know what does employer want in the beginning of the interview, you will be able to very well tailor your examples accordingly. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to talk about is about the interviewing process. Whenever you are interviewing, you need to understand one thing, that if we leave aside the top companies, many interviews are not trained for taking the interviews. And how does it affect your interview? The thing is that when the interviewer is trained, they are trained about how to tackle their unconscious bias. Whereas if interviewers are not trained, they might be, get under their unconscious bias. And what is this unconscious bias? It is something like this, that many times people make a judgment about your candidature in the first 5 to 10 minutes. So if you give them the great answers which they would like to hear from you, about your CV, about your experience, about your knowledge, or about your motivations to join the company. When they ask you questions like this, say, why don't you walk us through about the CV? So all these questions, when they ask in the first 5-10 minutes, they make some kind of judgment about you, whether you are a great candidate or you are not so great candidate. And when they make such kind of initial judgment about you, in the rest of the interviews, they try to corroborate the fact about that initial judgment and try to make it right. So if the interviews are not trained, it is extremely important that your first 10 minutes are extremely important, and you are very well prepared for the initial question that you can easily understand about your CV, about your projects, about your last 1 or 2 experiences, and most importantly about why do you want to join the company, what is your motivations to join in. So I would suggest that expect these questions which is going to come in first 5-10 minutes, and prepare a very strong answer for these as per the role or company or maybe any other thing. So be prepared for that. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is, which is again very important thing for an interview, is about understanding how your information is going to be processed by the interviewer. Let's take an example, and it is one of the very common question asked in any interviews in UK and Ireland, about tell me about your areas of improvement or maybe your weakness, or tell me about your failures or something you have learned after your failures or something like that. So these are very tricky questions, because if you're trying to oversmart over here, people will not like it. They would consider that you're not being honest. And at the same time, if you are telling them something which is completely contradicting to your role, it may harm your candidature as well. So how are you going to deal with that? The first thing you need to understand is that whatever information you are providing, how it's going to be perceived and processed by the other person. So let's take a common example, that someone asked you about areas of improvement, failure, or weakness, and you say something like this. So mostly there are 2 kind of questions people mostly make it. So one thing is people say is that I can't say no to people. So when people come back to me with different works, I try to do this thing. I try to do this within my extra time. I try to do this with my, by doing the things faster, or maybe putting some extra efforts, staying late at work, or maybe whatever it is. But I can't say no to people. So this is my weakness. And do you think how this answer will be perceived? If you're going for any role related to project management, program management, product analyst, or even for a business analyst, these kind of roles, people would, or maybe even for sales manager role, people will consider that your stakeholder management is very poor. You don't understand between who is important and who is not, what is on priority and what is not on priority. Most of the time people would like to see this difference, that one could understand what is important and what is a priority, and what is not important, what is not of priority. So if you're going for these roles, and if you go with these kind of answers, people might perceive that you are poor in stakeholder management. Because you are a poor in stakeholder management, those roles which primarily belong for stakeholder management, just like I said, that project manager, program manager, business analyst, sales manager, and all that, they may not be considering, or they might process this information like this, that you are a poor in stakeholder management and may not be fit for this role. Okay, so understand this thing, that whatever information you are providing, how it is getting perceived by people. Second answer that someone could give is that I focus too much attention about getting the things done in a very quality manner, and due to which sometimes I miss my deadlines. Sometimes. When you say sometimes, people may perceive it like many times. If he's saying sometimes, maybe it could be many times. He's just trying to narrow it down, his timeliness issues. Especially if you're going for a companies like Amazon, where the timeliness is sacrosanct. Employers will not like it. They would consider that missing a deadline is completely not acceptable. So try to understand, where you are interviewing, how you are interviewing, in what role you are interviewing, what company you are interviewing. Understand these basic concepts, and then you will be able to help it better. So in today's video, we have learned about the most important techniques about how to take up interviews, and I hope you like it all. And if you need any kind of career suggestions, or like about CV reviews, or career mentoring, or maybe any kind of things, feel free to come back to us at www.careerallen.com, or you can write it us at connect@careerallen.com. We'll be there to help you out. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching the video. Take care.